Welcome to another episode of the albumreview.net podcast. I'm Greg Potters. Joining me for episode number 95 is author Kevin Banks. Kevin was a guest on a previous episode of the albumreview.net podcast, episode number 44, which was titled Rapid Fire Roundtable. Kevin was part of a three-person roundtable discussion where we answer rapid-fire questions about music. The episode was titled, Does Music Today Suck? So Kevin Banks returns to talk about his newly published book titled Sloane, the Art School Underworld of 80s NYC. Kevin's book is about his experience living at 356 West 34th Street during his years as a college student at the School of Visual Arts, or SVA, in the mid-1980s. And not only does Kevin share some crazy stories about what happened in that building, but he also did a fine job tying music into the story, or stories, I would say. In this episode, Kevin and I will talk about the grueling process of writing the book, what it was like growing up in his hometown outside of Boston, and why those experiences might have been the catalyst to the outrageous events he experienced and participated during his time at Sloane. I'd like to take a quick second here to talk about this podcast. Believe it or not, over 50% of the people that listen are not subscribed to the podcast on their preferred platform. So I encourage you to hit the subscribe button now. This will help get more of my dream guests to continue entertaining you. So it's cold outside. Light that fire. Pour yourself a zero-gravity non-alcoholic IPA. That's right, it's dry January for me. And listen to my conversation with author Kevin Banks. Let's do this. So, okay, tell me more about the bang that you were just talking about. And I want to hear more about your book tour.
Sure. Hi, Greg.
Hi, Kev.
Hi, Greg. Thank you for having me on your show. Appreciate it. The bang, that's a euphemism for just things exploding professionally for me after the post-COVID lull. And in a sense, it was COVID that makes all this happen, that made the book happen, because we had some time off. But the bangs are launching a book a couple months ago, self-pubbing a book about the dorm I lived in New York City while attending art school in the 80s. I'm also, by coincidence, exhibiting original art in two different galleries in the Boston area, one downtown and one in the burbs, of a common theme, which you can find on my Instagram. But for a year that started off terrible for a lot of people, it's ending with three bangs, the book, two galleries, and now this podcast. So,
well,
to answer your question, I couldn't be happier.
I'm delighted to have you. And you were also a guest on a previous episode.
All right.
You may remember. Yeah. And also a friend and a movie geek and an art geek and a music geek. And there's so much, but we're going to focus today, and we're going to talk about your first book, Sloane, the Art School Underworld of 80s NYC, which is essentially, in a nutshell, kind of like you said, Kev, your experience going to college at the School of Visual Arts in the mid-80s in New York City. And Sloane is the name of the ever so interesting, ever so fascinating red brick YMCA building that you lived in on 356, I'd said it wrong, 356 West 34th Street. It's like when you talk a New York address, you can't be like, or 350. It's like people saying Massachusetts Avenue right away. They're not from Boston.
You could just say 34th and 9th.
34th and 9th. Okay. All right. So for the readers and the listeners, we're going to tie music into this interview. You need to read this book. I don't just say this. I don't just recommend any book to listeners. I've had a couple authors on the podcast, but I had an opportunity to read this book before having this conversation with Kevin. And this book it's quite unique. It's about an experience that you had in a somewhat public building on the Lower West Side of Manhattan all the time. I love the map at the beginning too. Like that's how my brain works. I'm like, I need to know where this is. Whenever I watch a movie, I have to Google Where was this
Yeah.
movie filmed? And it's who cares? But
Yeah.
I care about that. And all the time, starting in 1985, you were a quick 10-minute sub ride, or in some cases, a few blocks away from old school music venues like CBGB. You talk about these in the book, and others where you had access to key bands that were on the scene at the time. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Clash. This is the mid 80s. The Clash, Bowie, Doobie Brothers, Blondie, Devo, Elvis Costello, the Kinks. You mentioned all these in your book, and music plays a big part, not only in your book, but Kev, in your life during this time as well, which we'll get into in a bit. But first off, growing up in a suburb outside of Boston, in fact, the town you grew up in is situated directly next to the town that I grew up in outside Boston. And so, although you're 10 years before me, because I went off to college in 95, our high school experiences were very similar. So, despite the 10-year difference, I had a very similar experience partying in fields, driving cars way too fast, pushing the limits, feeling invincible. Do you think that those experiences, let's start with that. Let's start with like home life, high school, young Kev, very
Mm.
handsome Kev,
Thank you.
I may say. I meant it when I wrote that text back to you guys a couple weeks ago. I'd be romantically like you guys, the three of you. Woo. Do you think those experiences shaped you to become the person that you are today, or was that just a stop along the bus route of Kevin's life?
I think that that's a great question. And what I mentioned in the book is that the town is called Needham. Let's just open that up because
Woo!
I don't use the word Needham in the book
Thought
as
we
sort
weren't using real names.
of, I know it's the only real name I'll use. I don't use Needham in the book as it's a little bit of a middle finger. And also it's just another nod to say that this was in every town in the Boston suburbs.
Mhm.
It wasn't special. We weren't special.
Especially in
Uh,
the 80s. It was a
in the
lot, it was blue collar, in my opinion, my humble
Right,
opinion. And
right.
I think today it's gotten a little bit away from that, but that's for another day.
Yeah, it's much different now. And again, this was 40 years ago, and I sound old saying it, but it does seem like yesterday. And I wouldn't say that I was a lone wolf. I was always the type of guy in New York, in Needham, is that you ran with a quartet or a trio
Sure.
of comrades, is the
Uh-huh,
term I
sure.
use. Because it's like, it's almost like better than brothers, better than blood, and people that will have your back. And so we had a crew like that at Needham High School and had a lot of fun and did a lot of stupid things that teenagers do. A lot of it stemmed from alcohol, beer, because it was the 80s and Needham was the wettest, driest
It was
town.
easy to get.
And for some reason, you could get alcohol anywhere. And it was a different period. Everybody used to smoke and everybody used to drink.
Yep.
So that was a foundation. And so it ended up being of that habit and lifestyle. We had a lot of fun and a couple people here and there. There was some arrests, but there was a lot of practice for what was going to come in New York, as far as if you want to take risks, take chances, that you pay the price when you screw up.
You mentioned early in the book, Kevin, falling in love with Saturday Night Live
Right.
and being drawn to Belushi and
Yeah.
comedy.
Yeah.
And you reference SNL music guests such
Mhm.
as the Stones, and then the other ones I
Right.
briefly mentioned: the Clash, Bowie, Doobie Brothers,
Oh,
Blondie,
yeah. Woo.
Elvis Costello, Devo. How did the music of this particular time? So we're talking like early to mid 70s, right? Oh, mid 70s, because 75 was when SNL started.
Yeah, when it started, but I really tuned in and got hooked on it, I would say 1980, and then throughout the 80s. And so I got to see, and then through reruns, but I got to see as a kid, I was probably 14, 13, 14, looking and absorbing in music through the TV, through SNL. You would see them playing live, you would see them playing with the cigarettes and the smoke and that atmosphere. And it was very, I thought to myself, well, that's happening right now in New York City. I could go there, I could witness it. If I'd had a helicopter, I could fly over there and just see that band or something. So
Yeah.
the class playing like Straight to Hell on SNL was just glorious. Elvis Costello, couple Bowie a couple times, Stones. And so at that age, if you remember, you start to tune into this music is making me feel something different. I want to acquire it. I want to go inside it. I want to buy it. I want to see a concert. So it really put the hook in me. So SNL was the catalyst for that.
About a British jig and reel, speaking King's English in quotation, as railhead towns feel the steel mills rust, water froze in the generation, clear as winter ice. This is your paradise. There ain't no need for ya. There ain't no need for ya. Go straight to hell, boy.
And so I think I'm answering this question in the air already myself, but I always want to ask, how did that music influence you? Was it all the bands that we just named, like Bowie, The Clash, the Rolling Stones? Let's start with them. It's assery, right?
Yep.
And I'll get to me later, but I related similarly, but to music a little bit later. Do you think it was, and I'm not trying to, hopefully not ask a leading question, but do you think it was just the badassery or what is Bowie wearing? Or like just how Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, just how they walked onto stage. Do you think that was some of it? They don't represent the status quo, and I like that. Or was that something different? That's a totally leading question, but I wanted to get your take on that.
Well, you could put a parallel there between, I had a crew of dudes, other 15-year-olds, 14, 15, 16-year-olds that I ran with. So we were, in some sense, you could say that was a band. So you could cut and paste that sort of cocksure bravado and walk into a party on the weekend, a high school party, and just not give a damn if anyone objects to you being there, because there were four of us. And some of those other individuals are mentioned in the book. I did change everyone else's name, but they were good and still are good friends of mine from the Needham area. We've all moved to different towns. But as far as the band, one that had a big effect on me was seeing Devo. I got really into Devo for a long time, and the philosophy of de-evolution was intriguing as far as society is flushing itself down the toilet decade by decade. So that was interesting. And I was on an art school path from an early age. It runs in my family. My uncle had a design studio in downtown Boston. So my parents used to ship me off there sometimes during the summer to keep me out of trouble. And I got to see what he did. Like, he would work on early, very analog campaigns for Dunkin' Donuts and shoe stores and things like that, and get paid with cash. And all the employees were these hot girls and dudes with big mustaches, and cigarettes and stuff. And they're just drawing stuff with magic markers. And I said, that's what I'm doing. And so they got me on the path early. I also had a really good team of art teachers at Needham High School, who I will name check as Bob Enos, Richard Rourke, and Howard Bush. But it was Bob Enos who put his finger in my face one day and said, after class, see me after class. And I'm like, what? And he said, you're a talented asshole and you really need to grow up. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to go to any art school. So he gave me the sort of uncle what for.
Right.
And I kept getting in trouble in high school. And part of the punishment is that instead of detention, they used to send me down to the art department and gave me a broom and said, you can sweep up
Yeah, and you're
instead,
like, fine with that.
which lasted about 5 minutes. I think I crashed into somebody with the broom. And Mr. Enos, the art teacher said, sit down and start drawing these still lifes with me. And that's really where it took off. And he helped me focus. And instead of spending time in the parking lot drinking beer, go to the art department and draw some stuff. And my portfolio built up really fast. And he got me ready.
I want to talk about that in a little bit too, because that's going to be an interesting transition, talking about going from, I have similarities, going from the kid with minimal direction or not really sure to an adult influence, whether it be parental or somebody outside that. Because I think the overall message is gigantic that we need that. And to think that a child can just be like, oh, he's just going to figure it out himself or herself.
Right.
I think that's hogwash. I didn't used to believe that, but I really do now.
I totally agree. But if I can say anything, one teacher, and if you're a teacher listening to this, one teacher can change a kid's life trajectory for the better. And he did it for me. And
Absolutely.
I went back there years later and I spoke to his class and I told them, that's the guy over there that got me on a path and helped me grow up. And all he was doing was like, he would just deny it and say, that's my job.
On page 20, Kev, you reference what I think is a thoughtful, positive parental influence that really made me think. A lot of times, what I enjoyed about reading your book was I would stop and pause and I would think and I would smile. And because you know me, hopefully you can understand this as a compliment. The only other book that I really read, at least in the last 10 years that I did that, was Geddy Lee's book. Because I would read it and then I'd be like, huh. And I would, not only would I laugh, but I would put the book down. I would mark the page. Your book, it's got my chicken scratch all over it, but that's the way I like to do it. And so the positive parental influence or the positive adult influence, just like you mentioned, the art teacher, but also I think the big pivotal moment, your dad signing you up for a summer-long art program in Boston, your true love or your calling has always been art, and your dad nurtured that.
Yeah.
My parents did a lot, I think, and I think they had good intentions, but they were steering me away from music. So I'm standing here right now, jealous. Out of all the guests on this show, the many ones who have motivation, drive, and achieve success early on are the ones whose parents feed their passions. So you mentioned a little bit about that, but could you talk to me more about that? Like your dad really doing that. Talk to me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated because every book has that father-son relationship. And I was trying to steer away from that, but I just could not deny. The book is very honest. Everything in there is true. So his role in my success can't be understated. It was just part of it was I thought he was just trying to keep me out of trouble and out of his liquor cabinet, which I had learned how to.
I picked up on that.
Pour water into the vodka bottles and the gin bottles.
Oh yeah.
Then escape the house with my bike water bottle full of booze, and then go meet friends up under a train bridge and hang out there. But it's like, even after the part when I get arrested and he has to pick me up at the police station, I'll never forget this. He said, you only get one ride home from the police station. From now on, you got to walk. So he expected more arrests, but I thought he was very fair. And I point out that this isn't a book talking about.
I think it's fair now, but did you back then? Were you like, F you, Dad?
I'd never done this before. I'm like, that's what dads do. They pick you up from the police station. He had a 3 strikes rule with alcohol, which
what was 3? Military school?
Strike 3 was no car, no nothing. And you should really think about finding a new residence if you're going to pursue this career of alcohol and beer and partying, or you can focus and straighten yourself out. And it was the perfect storm of, I scored a job at an ad agency after school because I didn't play sports. I did track for a minute and got thrown out for fighting. Got a job in the art department of a small ad agency in our town, which happened to be near his office. So he would give me a ride home and could make sure that I was not screwing around or drinking with friends or something. So the job put some money in my pocket. and got me focused. The art teacher got me focused with the portfolio. And then he helped get me focused as in like, how do you apply to colleges? How do you apply to art schools? And where do you really want to go? Is it going to be Rhode Island? Is it going to be RISD? Is it going to be Mass Art downtown or further afield? And we both knew that it would probably be a good idea if I got out of the state for a while and just go either succeed or fail somewhere far away.
If I may, before we get to that,
Sure.
this is going to sound like a leading question again, but I'll answer it first by just saying, well, no, I'll let you answer first. I'll preface it with, I had a similar path
Yeah.
in high school. I don't mean with art. I always enjoyed art. I also played sports, so I was that one kind of weird guy that was friends with both. And what always pissed me off is when my football teammates would be like, "Why are you hanging out with those guys?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And my music buddies and my art buddies would be like, "Why are you hanging out with those jocks?"
Yep.
And I was always like, "Oh, I don't know." And then anyway, my question. Why do you think you rebelled so much in high school? Like why, or even earlier, like why do you think I'm going to get into some of this. Like actually, you one of the great quotes in the book that gave me a freaking ridiculous flashback because I had the same experience when you wrote, quote, "Great parties always peak with a spasm of overcrowding, loud tunes, and cops. But in most cases," Kevin, this should be on a plaque somewhere, "it's all about who shows up to light the fuse." So I took it as that's you. Why do you think that was you? Were you doing that to, here we go, here's leading, but if it's not the answer, I want you to be honest. Why do you think that you made a decision when you would go out to be that guy?
Part of it was because we could. I was also, I'll be honest with you, I was flanked by two members of the wrestling team, my comrades, so I was untouchable. And there was something about, and this continued for decades, is I like to see where the limit is, where the edge is. My dad called it creative new ways of causing trouble. I would want to take a new approach each time. But as far as to answer your question, and walking into a party and being like, let's light the fuse, that was fun. When you take things to a higher level, it's riskier. Some people would leave. They'd leave when I showed up. Or some people would lean in and say, all right, let's do this. And suddenly I had a team that we could trash the place, steal all the alcohol, and then go find a better party.
The shenanigan arts. That's what you wrote in your book. Senior year in high school, teaming up with another expert in the shenanigan arts. And again, I'm not judging because I was that same guy. But Kevin, if we flip the switch, and we don't have to, or flip the tables, I'll tell you exactly why I acted like that guy. I was angry. I was angry that my parents, who loved me to death, and I grew up in a beautiful town right next to yours, but I started loving these certain things, and the message I got all the time from everybody was, that's silly. That's silly. Big people, grown-ups don't do that. Grown-ups don't do art. Grown-ups don't do music. You've got to start focusing.
Oh.
And so I was angry. Are you telling me that you didn't do this? You didn't show up and say, forgive me, and I might be off. I don't really give a fuck if anyone cares if I flip this table or do whatever, if I do donut in the front yard. Your story, by the way, of driving when the cops show up to the party, driving off, was amazing. But do you think you were angry at something or someone?
I had to swim through all that, through the emotions, writing this book. And sometimes when you're a tourist in your own youth and you're looking back for too long, it's like looking at the sun, and it's not good for your eyes. And spending too much time thinking about things you did in your youth let's just put it this way. There are certain days where I was laughing for an hour and certain days where I was the opposite of laughing.
Sure, me too.
But I was not angry. At the time I had that little part-time job, and I thought, oh, $10 an hour. Geez. So I had money to buy music. I used to go downtown to Downtown Crossing in Boston and buy my Devo cassettes, my Clash cassettes, posters, all that stuff. Some vinyl, because my brother had a turntable. No, I don't remember being angry. I remember I felt like in my gut, I had a career path that I was working on. So I felt solid there. And my dad had my back. Like I say in the book, it's not one of those dramatic, dad came down the stairs and beat us for bad grades. Some of my buddies had that situation. I didn't.
And that was the culture back then too. If you got out of line, it was normal. You would go to school and say, my dad kicked my ass last night. And people would go, oh yeah. That was normal stuff.
So I heard about it. So I knew it existed. So I was a little bit scared of that. So when I did screw up, I said, well, I have to fix this. I can't drive the car for 3 weeks, that type of thing. And had to do some growing up. And when it was time to actually apply to schools, I think what was going on, and I mentioned this in the book, is I was terrified that I might not get to go anywhere. And if there was anything I wanted to do, is I wanted to go. I wanted to cross the Mass state line and get the hell out of here and see what happens when you go west. It doesn't matter how far, but just leave Massachusetts. And I thought I'd spent a lot of summers in New Hampshire and had a lot of fun. But I had, ever since I got a taste of SNL, I said, I'm going to New York. And I'll apply to the schools in Massachusetts, but I'm going to New York.
I'm laughing because this is like writing a song sometimes. And my next question was the transition, right? By the way, before I get into it, and I'm going to highlight your point that you just made, going to New York, getting out. During this time when you're, junior year, senior years, you're getting ready to go away, to go to school, to go to college. I think you mentioned in your book several times, like a lot of the music that was in your background or just in the foray. Is that the right word? The Police, Van Halen, Def Leppard. By the way, I don't care what anybody says. Pyromania is an excellent album.
It is.
So the key to my motivation was just like, so far we're early in the book and I'm already like, reason number 700 why I relate. I know you from the Kevin that I met 2 or 3 years ago. I didn't realize how similar we had of an upbringing, not in terms of like how our parents did things, but just how we walked through life and how we thought and what was important to us. And you mentioned towards the end of chapter 5, before you leave for New York City, quote, so what changes and motivates me to slam dunk the college applications? Simply put, I got terrified. I became acutely aware that I might be in this town after high school. Kevin, that was the only reason that I went to college. I didn't want to go, but I went because I was like, I can't be, within a month, I was like, oh, thank God, this is great. Like I found, but I did. But anyway, so the takeaway from that, that was a moment where I put your book down and I just stared into the sky. I think it was like a relatively reasonably not bone-chilling freezing day. And I was like outside and I was like, oh my God, these experiences, although memorable, they plant the seeds. They set up a big desire to get out, to move elsewhere. And the mindset that some people have of their hometowns, maybe not just in the Midwest, but all around the country, it probably exists in other nations as well, where they love it there, they never want to leave, and they want to grow old there. That didn't exist for you. It didn't exist for me. The goal was to get the hell out immediately after high school. And I just talk to me more about that.
Well, as a sidebar, it was difficult only because I had a couple of friends that I mentioned earlier, comrades, and we had a lot of fun in high school, trusted each other, families knew each other, and I felt like this is hard. Like we had a couple going away parties for me, 3 going away parties in August, and they were just like drunk fests. Yeah, man, we'll stay in touch. I love you, man. And I didn't know where I was going. I just knew that I was leaving. Yeah. But part of me, you can feel it when I say it, is that there's this need to find other members of your tribe. And I said earlier that I'm not a sports guy. We did a lot of Taekwondo and martial arts, which got us gym credit, which was very helpful because we skipped a lot of gym. But I wanted to find more members of my tribe and see what happens if I pursue a college education at an art school. What's going to happen? What's going to happen if I don't? So I had to go. And New York, I applied to 3 schools in New York City, and the School of Visual Arts came out on top. They floated a 1-year, first-year scholarship to get you to go. So it was a no-brainer. And I think it was Parsons and Pratt were also contenders. But SVA was the one that I went there and I took an admissions exam where you had to draw a bunch of pictures, which was really fun. They gave you these giant, heavy paper, and on the bottom of each sheet it said, draw this, draw that. And it was, I think it was a 2-hour test. And so they evaluate, and they look at your portfolio and your transcripts and all that stuff. And I got the letter around the same time that I was being told that I was going to graduate from high school because I had some issues. And yes, I'm also accepted to a school in the middle of New York City, and I'm going.
So you get accepted, you move into Sloane, the building and the title of the book, and this is the fall of '85.
Yeah.
And you're met with so many crazy experiences, even in the first weekend.
Yeah.
It's like, boom. So your building had a cafe. This one your building had a cafe that had cockroaches climbing over food trays. So I took that as that actually happened. Kevin, you wrote homeless people would also be eating in this cafe or this cafeteria.
Yeah, it's YMCA. Everyone is
and you also partied with your RAs.
Yeah.
Now, this is something that would have literally gotten me kicked out of college my freshman year. In fact, it almost got me into a ton of trouble as my very first night in college. I was busted for having beer in my dorm, and I had to go a week later in front of a college disciplinary board and plead my case that the beer wasn't all mine. So I got a lesser sentence.
Wow.
Anyway, did your parents know that you were sharing a cafe or a cafeteria with homeless people your freshman year?
No, it was, we pulled up in the book, we pulled up in front of the building. We thought we had the wrong building. You think like art school, it's going to be like mid-century modern. There's going to be people in berets smoking cigarettes. And there was literally a guy on the sidewalk that had pissed himself and was lying drunk in front of the door. And I was like, this is going to be interesting. But it said 356 YMCA. And you get inside. And
your dad's there with you? Your dad's sitting there with, what's the look on his face?
Well, it was before GPS, so we had a shit ton of traffic to get through and got lost in the Bronx. So I think he was happy to be
just
there.
Glad he was there.
Yeah, we grabbed a couple of sodas from the machines, and I didn't have a lot of stuff, so let's move you in. Met a couple of people in line to get their room keys, and some dudes and some really cute art chicks over here, and some homeless people, and some guy screaming at a trash can. And so the move in, it was hot, but I was like, what? When I got to the 9th floor, I went, oh my God. The carpets looked like brown paint, and it was just stuff spilled all over the place. And there was just endless miles of brown doors. But there were other dudes like me and like art school girls. And I said, all right, I can do this. And everybody had that look in their face, like grin and bear it. Is this for real? And then I'll never forget, there's a scene in the book, you might remember this, where my dad gives me $10 for fish and chips.
Yeah.
And he said, all right, stay in touch. Good luck.
I didn't use it for fish and chips.
And he's walking across the lobby and he turns and he looks at me And this is the type of thing that I could tear up over this, but I won't. And then he seemed to be looking
It's
at
okay.
me like, am I ever going to see this kid again? Or, right, I got rid of one of them because I'm one of four. I'm going to have a peaceful year now because I got him out of state.
He probably looked at it as an accomplishment. I think parents do that. Like, I did okay. I did okay. My son is at a prestigious art school, but I just had to like, I'm like, if my parents had dropped me off at a building like Sloane, they would have literally, and look, I'm not knocking Sloane. It made this story, it made this book. But I'm just like, that was, your dad was cool. That's basically the message I'm trying
He
to say.
was
My parents would have literally ripped me from the school and been like, we're out of here. We're turning back around.
There's a page in the book where we see people getting no, hell no. And they're just like one mom, father, and son are like, let's just go back to New Jersey, apply to a state school. This is wrong. This is not safe.
For seeing the dormitory. You don't, reason number 3,467 why your book is so good is because these are just not things that many of us have college experiences, especially we'll never forget the first girl we fell in love with, or for women, the first, or for gay people, the first man or woman, whatever the situation be. And we never forget the first time we pull up to our college dorm. Like, that's burnt into our brain. I remember details. By the way, your details, what you just said, my dad and I grabbed a soda from the machine. Your detail in the book was fantastic, and it allowed me to paint the picture. And so every time I'm reading the chapter, I'm picturing your clothing, I'm picturing your shoes, I'm picturing the music that's on in the background as you're having conversations. So kudos to you for that. But like, I had to call that out as a wow. And then the other one I have to give you a little bit of a hard knock for is, because I get this a lot, or I used to. You and I are pretty much from the same place, although you're 10 years older, and the music that well, whatever, that's irrelevant. But you mention a lot in the chapter that you're moving into Sloane that people are calling you JFK,
Yeah.
right? So they really thought that a guy from Needham, Massachusetts had a thick Boston accent?
Right, because this is New York. So anything not New York stands out.
I was like,
And my parents grew up on Mission Hill off Huntington Ave. So my dad had 100%. My mother would be like, Peter, come here. Who's Peter? And his name is
okay.
Peter.
All right. So there's some context there. That makes more sense then.
So my accent at the time was Boston, Needham, Boston accent. So when I got there was one girl called me JFK, which was, but I didn't know what they were referring to. Even my buddies were like, ask not what your pizza can do for you, stuff like that. I didn't even know what a pie was.
Right. Yeah. We called them, yeah, exactly. Like subs. Grinders. I would say that in college, and people would be like, what?
But it ended up being, and once I figured out what was going on, people in that first weekend, that chapter in the first weekend, where I would give my monologue like, hey, I'm from 927, originally from Boston. And they're like, yeah, no shit.
Your description, like I was just saying, your description of your early friends from college is really insightful. Like when you describe seeing a cute girl down the hallway, like I'm literally picturing her, and I'm pausing on that thought, and I'm pausing on reading the book. And for about 30 seconds, I'm stopped and I'm thinking of that girl, and I'm thinking of your reaction. And that's something that not a lot of artists and not a lot of authors can do. And you nailed that. So, but what I also liked, your friend who goes by Ryan one time loaned you his Killing Joke cassette. And Killing Joke is a post-punk British band whose music I'm sure rang through the halls of Sloane on a regular regular basis.
favorites.
What were some of the other I wanted to dive into that just slightly. What were some of the other post-punk bands that were on regular repeat during that time?
I'll just throw them out, maybe not so much post-punk, but oh man, Killing Joke, Dead Kennedys,
Great band.
Sabbath, early Metallica. But I think as far as overseas, New Order.
So sorry, I want you to continue to sec. But so this is interesting because I never used the term post-punk, but like in '85, I was 8. So post-punk is like what I guess I would call, and there's no right or wrong. Actually, you're probably right because you were first. I would call it early heavy metal. But you're right. Now that I think about it, it is post-punk because a lot of that derived from punk. Right?
And then, well, when you say post-punk, you got to watch like that family tree is going to branch out.
Yeah.
In any direction.
That.
So, for example, the Cult, Ian Astbury
Yep.
and Duffy, the Cult were huge. I think that the front of the book,
Such an underrated band,
is attributed a big influence to their Love album.
Yep.
Remember the symbols and things like that. So I took a little influence there. But the Cult were big. What else? Obviously, Talking Heads.
great example.
In Excess were all over the place.
Was that sort of, Kev, was that sort of before they got, or maybe it was during the same time I know them as, but I love them, by the way.
In Excess?
Yeah, but did they have a period where they were, like, because I know there were a lot of bands that, and this isn't a knock, there were a lot of bands, again, I love them. Kick is one of my favorite, but before Kick, were they a little bit more punky? Like before, I have this vision in my head, and it could be completely delusional, that some record producer got a hold of them and was like, you have to appeal to the masses. So write Kick. And before Kick, was Excess more of it? Yeah, commercial. I don't know why I couldn't think of that word. Before Kick, was In Excess more of a like that kind of edgier?
I knew of them through MTV, like we all did. Bowie, and they were MTV darlings. They had a song called The One Thing. And but Kick, I think Kick was like 86, 87 because that just exploded. But moving back a little bit, back to 85.
Yeah, back to the earlier stuff.
Yeah, MTV drove so much of
what
we were listening to. Obviously, Queen,
Zeppelin,
like the food groups, the building block of Pink Floyd, Queen, Zeppelin, Stones, Beatles. It was all there, except the Beatles were probably not on MTV. But that was another portal besides SNL for this is how I'm getting my music and getting it visually. So it's coming through my eyes and I'm feeling it in my gut. Not just ears, their videos, how they market themselves. And that becomes fuel for creativity later in the book when we start to, my buddies and I run for student government. How are we going to market ourselves as a band? How are they going to, I happen to be hanging out with musicians. So a lot of the guys in the book were musicians, started a band and named it the Sloane Rangers, which was like a dig. That was something that angry people called us when we were playing music too loud was shut the hell up, Sloane Rangers. It was like a derogatory term.
Right.
Because we patrolled the building a little bit from time to time. So they ended up using it for the band name and they put out 3 albums.
Wait, seriously? So you were in a band? I didn't know this. Did you? You never told me this.
I didn't tell you because I was not in a band.
Okay.
My friends, the other gentlemen in the book were the musicians. I was like the Malcolm McLaren, the marketing guy, the propaganda, the flyer maker, slash roadie and MC, and I MC'd for them at CBGB's. So I was band adjacent. And to your point, a lot of people thought I was in the band, but I would never say no.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. My band right now, we've got like Brett, our sound guy, but we include him on all communication, and he really is in the band. He shows up to the gigs,
so I was one of those guys.
But you were more, you were the marketing guy, and they're just, I'm not blowing sunshine up your ass. They're just as important.
And they played a bunch of dates, and it was a lot of fun. So I have a chapter on CBGBs in there because I was never a big fan of CBGBs. I would say I liked it, and I felt like I felt like I was being ripped off a little bit because I had missed the heyday of CBGBs.
Right. It was, exactly. It was with the rock and roll. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It's what the
I'm
Rock and Roll
sure.
Hall of Fame is now, or what you go to Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah, it was a
It's not like it
cartoon.
was.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it was
Yeah.
just this piss-drenched cartoon, and I'm sure the people listening will right now will take me to task for it, but it's just my opinion. It doesn't mean it was a
I
bad
think that's a
place.
very valid point, Kev. Like you were there when it wasn't necessarily in its heyday. So it was a stop on the bus tour, but you were
86,
there.
87. Yeah.
You were there and you got to say that. Like, Jesus, I'm going to get in trouble for this. I say that about Bob Dylan now. I have a neighbor who I argue with all the time. He just never liked Bob Dylan, but I think Bob Dylan in 1966 was the greatest artist on the planet. When I
Yeah.
see him now, it's a shell of himself, but I'm like, I'm in the presence of Bob Dylan. And so
Right.
that's kind of CBGB for you.
Yeah.
Who were some of the bands that tell some of the listeners, who were some of the bands that you saw at CBGB besides your band, the Sloane
Yeah,
Rangers?
it was just so random. There was a really cool punk band called Alice Donut, which I knew.
That's
I don't think they're still alive. But the one that really just shook me was sitting in CB's was very informal. There was no, you can't go back here, you can't go there. To
right,
get to the downstairs to the bathroom, you had to go backstage a little bit. And then when you got downstairs to the bathroom, you wish you hadn't, because
right.
just puddles and
Sex,
puddles.
drugs, and rock and roll.
No, just puddles of piss.
Ah,
Yeah, it was
people
just
would just
loud.
walk down and piss and
Oh,
not even
people
go
that
into.
waiting in line for the men's room are just like, I'm just going to pee here on the stairs.
Yeah,
So
right, right.
that aspect, and I can handle a little shit blood, but it smelled like pneumonia. So on that level, I was like, you could have had a little respect for your patrons and like
Totally.
mopped it out
Right.
once a week.
Yeah, right.
But and
Good
then the
point.
bartenders were always looked like they were tripping out on heroin, and so it took forever to get a beer. So I mentioned that in the book. Like I would get 3 beers at once and just hold on to them, and I'd share one with a girl, and maybe she'd reciprocate. And I was probably at the time, probably about 130 pounds. So not somebody
One
who's,
beer and you're hammered.
yeah, not somebody who's going to be entering the mosh pit. So I would take a bar stool nearby and just watch the mosh pit and watch people come out with bloody noses and missing teeth and one shoe. And it was fun. Yeah.
Props to you for not blowing sunshine up the ass of the CBGB legend. Like you say it how it is, right? And there's a lot of things like that
It's
too.
what I saw.
Right, but I think that's very valid because there are a lot of things out there, and that doesn't take anything away from CBGBs. That doesn't mean that the 70s weren't special, but you happened to get there. So you mentioned other clubs in the book, but you had your own experiences.
Yeah.
And the same goes for Boston. There were a lot of clubs in Boston that were quite frankly out of this world and amazing. The Channel, the Rat, it goes on. Thank God the Paradise is still there. I was just there 2 weeks ago. Thank the Lord it's still there. But there's a huge reflection moment. There's several of them, but another one I wanted to call out. The New York City chapter of your book, you write, quote, I think about everything I've enjoyed so far. Does this happen in Sloane? Excuse me. Does what happened in Sloane happen because it's Sloane? Because of the environment? Or does it depend on the maturity of the individual? End quote.
Immaturity.
Immaturity. So I guess it could go either way, but your words were immaturity. Sorry. This is great because once again, it sums up to me the college experience. Does this place pull this sort of craziness out of us because it's a crazy place? Or is it just feeding someone a perfect medicine of mischief, a perfect medicine of vandalism and debauchery that's always been hiding deep down in one's soul? I got to college and I was like, oh my God, there's nobody here to tell me what to do. And I can do whatever I want. And then 10 seconds later, I was like, oh, but if I do that, then I'm going to fail out and I'm going to be right back at home. And I'm going to go up against the whole idea of I need to get the hell out. So I went to class because I was terrified that I would flunk out and end up at home. And rather than appreciate learning history of civilization and the Renaissance and marketing, I was like, I better do good so I don't go home, right? So I have a lot of regrets about that. But again, I think this is the definition of college, in my opinion. What are your thoughts about that? You clearly wrote it, but I wanted to get your.
Everybody goes through that. And what we did, it's called the jam. And near the end of the semester, you realize, I'm in trouble. Uh-oh. And you have to rally to get those grades up or to finish those projects or finish a large painting or something. And at that point, I noticed Sloane would get very quiet and people would be buckling down towards, we didn't have midterms. We had maybe midterm projects. A lot of second year when we were studying like the principles of illustration, you had something due every week. So as long as you hit those marks, and it was hard at first, and I missed a bunch of classes and got on the shit list. But part of it is just you got to grow up and straighten up. And what the book does, and I don't want to ruin it for people, is that from page 2 to page 320, these people grow up. And so that is the arc, is that we're a bunch of freaking idiots freshman year. And then by senior year, some of us have moved out and we're getting work into art directors club competitions on Park Avenue, selling artwork, having our own shows, and doing what we're supposed to be doing. And then graduating, we all graduated and launched careers in '89.
I think it's like really almost the definition of maturity. And nowadays they're saying, a lot of people are saying, oh, why go to college? And I get it. We don't have to go too far off on that. It is very expensive. It always has. But it's the first time that whether I like it or not, or let me back up. Month 1, I was like, oh my God, I'm having a really good time. And like all these
What was her name?
cute girls are talking to me, and everyone. Here was the cool thing. You and I grew up in the same town. It was not diverse, right? And on my hall, there were people from all over the world, all over the country. I had a buddy from New York. There was a guy in my hall from Montana, a guy in my hall from Kentucky, right? And all I wanted to do is ask them, like, what was life growing up? And we found we had the same interests. We liked the same movies, we liked the same people, we liked the same food, we liked the same music. And I was like, holy crap. And then I was like, this is it. This is the definition. I'm almost seeing my parents going, this is what we were trying to get you to do in high school, but we knew you couldn't. And it was like almost, oh, I get it. If we want to have that joy in life, we have to work hard for it. And I get it. So, okay, I'm in. I want to stay here. Yeah. And so I'm going to work hard, and I'm now going to have a different mindset when I go to class. And I got that sense from your book when I read it. And it was just another reason why I felt like I was relating. And I almost felt like in many ways we were the same person in some weird way.
That's the beauty of New York City. You come in there and you are just one of millions of people. And the day I moved in, Dad took off, gave me $10, and I got that feeling in my stomach. I don't know anybody in this entire city. And then I thought about it for a minute, and I thought, well, my mind started going. I'm like, in the little circus brain, how are we going to change this? And I started meeting people immediately. And in the lobby, every color, I wouldn't say every nation, but every color and shape of person that you could ever dream of is hanging around the lobby in line, trying to get their mail, chilling, having drinks. And I was like, I am so glad that I got to.
Here's real life. This is real life. I'm now.
And then at the school, everybody is everything. So, and then the teachers are from around the world, and it's really fascinating. The museums were free for art students. All the museums were free. And some of the nightclubs you could get in for free with the art student ID. So all this exposure. So that's what's going into your head in the most positive, and you're using it to learn, to listen. That was my big thing, is just shut up and listen, and then produce artwork and keep that machine of inspiration going. And a lot of it, and I remember second year, it's like saying to the guys walking to school, and I catch our reflection in the windows of Macy's, and we're a bunch of wackos with bad haircuts and big black portfolios and cheesy, the buttoned up collar thing like this. And I'm saying, we're going to school to draw naked women. Enjoy this, because it's going to be over in a couple of years. This is the good life. And 20 years ago, they'd be sending knuckleheads like us off to Vietnam to be sniper bait. So we've got it made, so enjoy it. And also, who's got a lighter?
It's an amazing, yeah. I love that. Yeah, exactly. Right. Enjoy it. And so it's making sense to me now, Kev. Like I don't know if anyone else has ever told you this, but I think you were a lot more mature at a younger age than a lot of us, because you saw that. Okay, yeah, there was the mischief stuff. I got into mischief, but like I thought it was interesting that I think you had a little less fear than I did. Like I was just anxiety ridden all the time. And I'm not saying that you didn't have anxiety. You're a human being, but some of the things you did, I would have been like, I'll get in trouble. So
Wow.
your maturity level was like, everything's going to be okay. Nothing's going to happen to me. Maybe it will, but I'm comfortable in my own shoes. I guess that's what I'm trying to say is you're comfortable in your own shoes.
I
And
was,
and a lot of kids aren't at that age, Kev.
everybody does it differently, but I'll be completely honest with you and the listeners. And I'm sure you can relate to the fact that in retrospect, what we were was a bunch of scared little boys. Let's think about that phrase for a minute. Scared little boys. Drinking heavily, doing a lot of drugs, a lot of weed, mushrooms, no cocaine because it was too expensive and too yuppie.
Right,
Um,
right.
but I would, if I ran into my 18-year-old self, I'd say, look at that knucklehead and his scared little friends. That I think is true. And then that is the safety net which we build. We build a tribe. I did it in Needham and did it immediately when I got to New York because I needed a tribe of literally people who were bigger than me, who I could run with and not worry about getting jumped. But no matter who you're with or how many people you're with, I still got a gun in my nose a couple of times,
Right.
Lower East Side, just trying to shoot a game of pool. And somebody said, I'm next. So pistol in the nose. We had some close calls with the weirdest close call was actually we took a road trip out to University of Connecticut because one of my buddy's little
All the way
brothers,
down to stores.
yep, all the way to University of Connecticut because there was a big party going on there. And we're all dressed in black and with black hair, the art school thing. And we run into this dormitory party of a bunch of sportos, and they're not too happy about us
Crashing
fraternizing
their party. Yeah.
fraternizing with their lady folks.
Right. Oh, yeah. That's common.
Enough drinks later, this big fight breaks out. And what do? But we pull out, we're all carrying boot knives and nunchucks and spiked brass knuckles and things and just go at it. My buddy lost his shoe and I'm flailing this boot knife around in front of this guy. And we back into an elevator and get out of there. And I was like, I'm so pissed off because I was talking to a couple of folks and I was like, shit, now we got to leave. And so what do? Is we look in the parking lot and there's just this row of pickup trucks and threw a cinder block through each windshield, pickup trucks. Not that I'm happy about that, but then we peeled out and took off. That's not maturity. That's reactionary.
No, it's not. But you answered without you really thinking that you wanted to. You answered my question from earlier when you said, no, I wasn't angry. And you know what? You just proved it. No, you just proved it. You weren't. But you were scared.
You're right.
And that was but that's okay, man. I just told my whole, and so we don't have to dive any more into that. It's, so now I'm like, okay, Kevin's not a robot. He's human. Because I was thinking for a little while that you were like this robot. And I was like, I need to pick this guy's brain in a different way now. Like, how do I?
And if anyone who reads the book will find out quickly that I am no hero. I am not the hero. I'm the narrator. But I'm also writing honestly because I was not the nicest guy.
Yeah.
And you can ask, I'm the administrator of the Sloane Facebook group for the past 18 years. It's where I did a lot of my research. Great people. I do all the merch and everything. But I'm sure there are people on there that off the record would say, no, him and his friends were assholes and they partied a lot and they took over.
Right.
And they broke things and they shot fireworks down the hallway and they set stuff on fire and threw stuff off the roof, which is true. But if that's not a confession, I don't know what is. The book is not a cleansing.
The statute of limitations is up.
Yeah, it's up. It's been 40 years. But unfortunately, the book, 2/3 of the crazy, shitty stuff that we did made it into the book. Some stuff I couldn't write. And as we said earlier, everyone's name is changed for legal purposes. I worked with a publishing consultant who said the first thing you got to do is get everyone's name out of there.
Yeah.
So we have variations on our names.
Smart.
Yeah, because some people don't take kindly to their 50-something.
Yeah, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that no matter what, in my opinion. So I think you made the right choice. That's an obvious choice.
So I paint my comrades as, I would say they're the heroes, and I thank them to this day for having my back. And I tried to quit school second year, and Ryan kind of turned it around and said, let's drop acid and run for student government. And so we did that, and we got elected student government. We didn't think we would. And the whole plan for that was to get elected, and then on election day at the freshman orientation, we were going to resign and do have a mic drop moment. But we were enjoying it too much because they gave us a $40,000 budget and offices and telephones and staff.
Wow.
And
Amazing.
and then we got nuts, and the parties happened in the office, and we embezzled a little bit of money here and there. And I want to ruin the ending because there's a couple good chapters on that near the end.
Getting back to some of the musical influences, you mentioned Chili Peppers, which I was really happy to see them in there. Because I feel like in the 80s, like they were really underground in the 80s.
Yeah.
You also mentioned Madonna. We already talked about Talking Heads, New Order, but I have a serious question for you. Were you drawn to these artists because we already talked about MTV, but were you drawn to these artists, do you think, because they were on the radio and MTV at the time, and that was just what you were exposed to? Or did you have to weed through some of the crap to finally find these artists and go, oh, this is my club?
No, I just, it's like the way the rain falls. You get hit with what's coming.
Yeah.
The Chili Peppers, we were one night, someone said the Chili Peppers and Fishbone. I'd seen Fishbone at CBGB's.
Where, was this a show?
Fishbone is opening for the Chili Peppers in Hoboken at some small dive. It was like the paradise.
Wow.
So I went and I fell asleep.
That must have been amazing. You fell asleep? How dare you?
I saw Fishbone. I loved Fishbone. And then Chili Peppers came on and I fell asleep because too much.
You saw Flea in the heyday. Okay, I got you. All right, that's excusable. Wouldn't you say that some of this music was the soundtrack of each year that you were there? Like when you hear a song, you immediately think of this one girl or this one night that you passed out and woke up and didn't know where you were, or another experience?
Chili Peppers, it would be Higher Ground. Yeah, and I'm not sure who I'd pin that to, but as far as a girl, it would be Two Gurus, the Australian band. Mm-hmm. Out That Door, I Want You Back.
I can still recall the time she said she was always mine, and she lived as people do and forget what we've been through. It's not that she's gone away, it's the things I hear that she has got to say about me and about my friends. When we got no defense, that's her, I'll never believe her again. She might have deceived all my friends. I know that we'll see him again. But why do you don't need what she said?
Almost like Aussie rockabilly.
Okay.
A bit romantic. And then a lot of it would be the Cult and Killing Joke for every year. And so there's one story where the Cult is playing and we're doing a sort of a, we're bored, we're stoned, what can we entertain ourselves with? And I introduced the Rat Trap.
Yes.
And I don't want to ruin it, but that was a turning point for us in, if we're going to do shenanigans, we got to be careful because this one almost went a little too far.
Give us a little teaser. And then like every television show does nowadays, they have that hook at the very end.
The New York City police were called and they came into the dorm looking for us. And we had already escaped down the back stairwell, went to the safe house. And the safe house at the time was the Blarney Stone Pub on 8th Avenue. And we had to hide out there. And we had a couple of freshman scouts that we sent out to
pledges.
Do some recon, and let us know what was going on the ninth floor if the police had left and stuff like that, because we got a little carried away. So one of the things we did sophomore year is we started recruiting freshmen to be foot soldiers and spies and things like that, just to have other patrols on other floors. And it sounds like a young fascist group, but in some senses, we were a corporation because we were organized and we had agency.
Yeah, you guys were smart. That's when it gets dangerous. You guys
we
were
were
smart.
very tactical.
We're just a bunch of dumbasses.
So in the worst way, but sometimes that tactical and that organization got out of control. Like some of the stuff that we launched off the roof of the building was very dangerous, like a shopping cart full of
that could kill someone.
Paint cans that we found in the storage area. But it was pretty funny because
I'm trying to have my parental face at you right now, but it's too difficult.
I know, scowl at me. But behind Sloane was the main branch of the post office, which is now at the Moynihan train station.
So that's where the statement "going postal" came from. It's a guy got hit by a Kevin Banks flying shopping cart, and then he went postal.
But the shopping cart hit a mail truck, 15 stories. The shopping cart hit a mail truck and spilled, I think it was pink paint, which is all over the mail truck. So whenever we were going to school and the mail truck with the pink paint all over it drove by, we would fall down laughing.
Yeah.
It was kind of like a Jackson Pollock moment. So I used that pink color on the cover of the book as a tribute inside.
Yeah. Speaking of the cover, I've seen this was another moment. I stopped and was like talking out loud to nobody. I've seen your pigeon logo 100 times at least, but I never really knew, I shouldn't say really, I never knew why the pigeon was carrying a cigarette in its beak, but you explain it in the book.
Yeah.
Can you share it for the listeners? This made me laugh out loud to myself.
It's like New York moments. And I have hundreds of them and I had to distill them for the book. Just weird, only in New York. I'm sure people have heard that expression. But yeah, the pigeon became a mascot for all things Sloane. I think it was about 10 years ago that I had designed a graphic for it. But the book is set up in 10-page chapters.
Right.
Because our short attention span world these days, if we can peel ourselves off the phone, you can probably read 10 pages. So we've got 38 chapters.
You'd be surprised how quickly.
Yeah. 30
surprised myself. But it's also a good book. Sorry, I keep interrupting you, but
30-something chapters, each no longer than 10 pages. And there are also, for people that's a little long, there are 13 one-page chapters, just little vignettes called smoke breaks.
Yeah.
And the reason I call them smoke breaks is because if you've ever gone outside a bar, outside a school, an office, whatever, back in the day on 34th Street, people would go outside and smoke next to the building. And smokers have this language of honesty that they use. This sort of, it's not a confession. It's more like if they're amongst a group, they talk very candidly. And it's like bar talk. The entire book is written like a bar stool conversation with your buddy.
Right.
It's gross. It's very clear. And if you're talking to someone in the bar, they can barely hear you in the first place. So you choose your words quickly and you get to the point quickly. Yeah. So same with the smoke breaks. So to your question.
And it's just you and that other person on a smoke break, whereas you say something in a bar and you're at risk of 12 other people hearing it.
Smoke break is very intimate. So the pigeon came from, I think it was just this beautiful.
This is a great story.
Spring or fall day. And I'm just like, oh, we should skateboard up to Central Park and go see if those girls are there, or we should go maybe somewhere. And me and Jim are waiting for some of the other crew to come downstairs or get skateboards. And Jim is eating a basket of fries from TNT Pizza across the street. I was like, give me some of those fries. So we're both eating fries, finish them up, and he chucks a French fry, and then pigeons come in. Pigeons are in, doing their thing, no more fries. And then his notorious camel, he flicks the camel cigarette over, and one of the pigeons, this like fat pigeon, thinks it's a French fry and picks it up and just starts like walking around like a tough guy smoking a cigarette, and then just instead of flying, walks away.
Right. I was laughing so hard, dude. It was just that is such a great, and then you tie it into, and I've seen that that drawing 1,000 times. And I just thought which I still give you credit for, even if that story didn't happen, I still thought that was a really cool looking design, but it was true. It was based on truth.
That happened.
Yeah.
So, like, and then we went to the subway and took off. We didn't really care. But I did make great T-shirts, coasters, that all the merch from the Pigeon, all over the Facebook page and the website, the Pigeon.
It's a brand new day. So when you're gonna throw me? Shake it, what's my life? I could take you to heaven. I could spin you to hell. I'll take you to New York. It's the place that I know well. Shake it, what's my life? Sitting on a flagstone, talking to a faceless girl. Shake it, what's my to say, but my eyes do the talking so well. Duck and I sway. What's my life? I shoot at a full moon. What's my life? So what's my life? Shake it, baby.
So in terms of creating the book, walk us through, like, how long had this book been taking up space in your head before you started putting pen to paper?
Good question. I tell people it took 4 years because I took it seriously for 4 years, and a lot of those were COVID years. So I had a little time on my hand. And the backstory on me is I'm a freelance art director. So sometimes you can go for days or weeks at a time and you're looking for work, or you're waiting for work to come through, or you're waiting for feedback on something. So you have to use your downtime wisely. So I said to my wife, I'm working on Sloane, because it was her idea. She's the brains of the duo. Back in 2015, I was watching a Patriots game, and I have to shut the volume off during the commercials because I don't like Bud Light and I don't like Ford trucks, and I don't need another TNT phone. So I shut the volume off. And so there's this pocket of time where I had a notebook and I just started writing down one-pagers of some of my memories from Sloane, because she's been hearing about him for 22 years almost. And I just had this notebook of one-pagers. So during COVID, I took the notebook of one-pagers and I said, what if I'll put them into the computer and make them 2 pages and flesh them out a little bit, and then 3 pages, and then I'll put this one before that one. And so it's just built on its own. And the one funny sidebar on that is I didn't use Microsoft Word because I don't like Microsoft Word. I'm a design guy. So I used InDesign. I just made a text box and went right into an InDesign document and then just title it. Because for me, InDesign is like a creative platform and playground, whereas Word seems like that's where writers go and something. And I'm not a writer, but I couldn't exactly do a graphic novel because it would have taken 20 years to get all these stories in.
Right.
So I wrote as best I could, and I had been published before. I had wrote a couple of features for the Phoenix, and I wrote here and there, but never considered myself a writer. I considered myself an interloper or a trespasser in that medium. I like trespassing and trying new things, like go try some sculpture or go try photography, and now I'm going to try writing. And I'm too old to give a shit if somebody likes it or not.
Yeah, that's the key, right? But I think you've always been like that. You've always been like that. And that's what makes a successful, not just artist, but person. Okay, maybe you have to care a little bit, but not to the level that a lot of us.
So I said to myself, I'm just going to keep writing. And I had friends, the Phoenix closed in 2013, but I had this great,
The Boston Phoenix you're talking about, for people that are wondering,
yeah,
which was the premier. I was violently depressed when it closed down, but that
alternative
was the
music,
premier exactly. And that's where you
alternative
went for all
music.
things before the internet took over.
And they also owned WFNX Radio, which was
Yep.
an alt music station, and just killer, killer, killer.
Yeah.
And I had access to these editors and writers that I could send. I make a PDF of a 2-pager and send it for feedback to my buddy, the film critic, or my buddy, the staff writer, or my buddy, the editorial assistant, people that had background in this. Am I doing this right? And a lot of them just said, keep going and rearrange some of these paragraphs and just keep going. Not like you can't do this or this is
Right.
wrong.
Right.
But what everybody said was, did this really happen? Is this true? And I said, yeah, I'm just reporting what happened. And then the thing that clinched it was my neighbor was over, and this was right after COVID. I was telling him the story about there's a chapter about Diana Ross in the book that gets really graphic, and I'm not going to go there. But I was telling him the story. It was like a bar stool conversation, and he almost threw up.
If that's not a selling point enough for people. So, like, Kevin, I
And
also have to,
changed everything.
I,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
no,
there
go
was
ahead.
one more thing. That same gentleman lived 2 houses down from me, drinking buddy, that type of thing, COVID buddy, and all that. And our daughters, our friends, he got a cancer diagnosis during COVID and had to quit drinking and smoking and stuff. And I was not doing too well health wise with the alcohol. So I thought, if he can do it, I can do it. And
Yeah.
so, thanks to this one dude, let's just call him Andrew, not only did I quit drinking, but I got a book out of it.
Can we talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Because I've spent, I think, a lot of time with you. We've gone to concerts
Yeah,
together, and I don't want to make this seem like it's an ass kissing session, because you can be a prick sometimes. But I really admired the fact when you just made the decision. We got together at a
right.
mutual friend's place to watch movies. So talk to me about this, Kevin. And I've been meaning to ask you this, and I think that this hopefully for you is okay. It couldn't have been that easy, because you tore it up for so many years,
Mhm.
and alcoholism runs through my family through
Yeah.
generations. And I believe more so as a kid. That was the other thing that I chip on my shoulder. I saw a homeless person and I'd be like, "Yeah, it's their fault. They're there because they're lazy," right? And thank God I don't have those thoughts anymore. And I have similar feelings towards alcoholism, that it is a disease, that it's not a choice. And I'm not saying you're a disease, but my point is it's not easy to just flip a switch. What has your experience been like? Because I've noticed now has it been 3 years?
Four,
Four
four and a half,
years.
4.5.
So let's just pause for a second. And I want to say, if nobody else says this to you, maybe your family does, congratulations, because that's a big goddamn deal.
Thank you. I recommend it. And it's easy to drop platitudes and this and that. And I just quit cold turkey after a couple of health scares. But the fact is,
I was there for one of them.
the 50 something body does not need or appreciate alcohol, and it will fight back. So,
Yeah.
and I had a great run. I think it started when I was 13, 14. So I was happy to leave.
You were
And
happy. You didn't struggle. You weren't like, you're like 1 foot in, 1 foot out type of thing.
no,
You didn't
no,
do that. It
cold
was just,
turkey, August 15th, 2020 something.
you remember the, yeah.
And
Okay.
what ends up happening is I think I told you and some of the other dudes, like, yeah, I'm going to take a 3-month break, 6-month break or something.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing.
I thought you might be back.
But the more time that went by, the better it got.
Right.
And then after year one, I started getting, I think it makes more room in your brain. So the creative side
That's a fact.
gets to move over. And then I started producing better work. I started to really lean into Sloane. I started doing more art. I did a whole online art gallery during COVID. So things was, and then things obviously health wise, I would wake up in the morning and just be ready to go. Things in the family got much better, calmed down. And then life got really easy. And I noticed I had a lot of time on my hands. I had a lot of money in my bank account. So this is all old news for anyone who has quit drinking. But the most important part is it got me to focus on long-term tasks like the book or larger pieces of art, and then look at my career overall. Do I really want to be a freelancer, or do I want to go back downtown for the corporate experience? And where is the industry? I was partner with a marketing group out of Portsmouth, remotely, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and we rebranded some breweries. And I'm like, do I really want to do this? So it got me to examine things better without having to hit the bar every weekend. And you basically shut off your weekend if you do that. So I
Right.
had all that extra time and extra money and extra focus. And like I said earlier, that's how the book happened. Like I had to, when I finished the book,
It's a great story.
I had to find a way to turn it from a manuscript into a book that you
Yeah.
can order on Amazon or go in a bookstore one town over. How does that? And I didn't know how to do that. So I got in touch with a gentleman out of Alabama who was a tech guy, about
How'd
my
you
age,
find him? How did you find him?
LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah, the algorithm did me proud.
Great tool.
Yeah. We started talking about the Patriots and we started talking about bookmaking and Sloane, and we got it done over the summer and got that thing published in October 1st, I think it was. And then I had a reunion, a Sloane reunion was October 18th in Midtown next to the large pigeon sculpture. So it was
Right.
just beautiful. And to get people from all over the country that used to live at Sloane at a reunion, all these 40, 50, 60 somethings,
Yeah.
actually 50 and 60 somethings, just coming up to me and I'm signing their book and they're saying, thank you for making a document of my suffering.
Right. Right.
It's just a lot of fun. So the book, and then subsequently the book has taken on a life of its own. It's selling like crazy. I get people leave reviews on Amazon, which are fun to read. Some people I know and some people I don't.
Sure.
And also I think maybe this year people are like, pardon, it's just fuck 25. I want to go listen to some 80s music and go back
Yeah.
to Midtown Manhattan in 1985.
So, so let me stop you there because once again, another beautiful transition. I have to thank you for sending that outline several weeks ago.
Yeah, the
It really
music.
gave me a baseline, but then I ended up using some of it, but it was really, as I was just reading your book, I was like, holy shit, I have 1,000 questions to ask him. But the then versus now portion of some of the notes you sent me, and I don't expect you to remember exactly, but like how, you wrote how streaming killed the shared boombox moment.
Yeah.
So I ask almost every guest that I have on the show, what do you think of the music industry today compared to pros and cons compared to, let's say, 1985?
Well, the pros are, and I still use music as religion when I'm feeling good or when I'm feeling bad. Music is going to be there spiritually and sometimes literally, physically. I can, like tonight, I'm going to be downtown watching my friend's band in JP. I'm looking forward to that. So there's the physical ramification. This morning, I wanted to hear some really aggressive music to get me in the mood for the day. So I put on some Australian punk, Ammo and the Sniffers, which is, she's definitely worth traveling for. So the music is like the pros, you can get anything you want at any time. So, which allows me to go back in time. When I was writing Sloane, I literally put on 80s music every single time.
I'm sure.
And I would leave the room. I would go back to Sloane. I would say, oh my God, that band opened for Living Color.
Right.
Or we used to hear the Beastie Boys debuted Fight for Your Right to Party on Howard Stern in the winter of 86. And at Sloane,
Wow.
when you walk down the hall in the morning, everybody was listening to Howard Stern. So that song was playing on everyone's stereo. Like when you go into the elevators, you could hear Howard Stern and Robin Quivers laughing in
Oh,
stereo, like, "Ho, ho, ho, ho." But
oh,
he had the Beastie Boys debut Fight for Your Right to Party
I did not
on
know
his
that.
show,
Wow.
which was so fun. I'll never forget it because we were all drinking at 9 a.m.
Right. Oh my God. I'm a Proclaimed? Stern fanatic.
Yeah.
I listen every day.
He was a big deal. He was on K-Rock
He
on
was a huge
Terrestrial.
deal. He was a huge deal because we all know this. He was doing something that nobody else was. And that was another thing I didn't put into my notes. And I appreciate you bringing that up, was like how influential Stern was at that time. And he was in New York City.
Your question was in the pros and cons. The cons are people complain about music now, this and that. I don't have any complaints because I can still find like the Australian punk scene is tremendous. Manchester, a band like Idols, not Manchester, I forget where they're from. Bristol, I don't know, somewhere in the UK. Just give me Idols and the Sniffers, and I can still go back and I can listen to the Hoodoo Gurus and Husker Du, Dead Kennedys, Cult, REM, Killing Joke. It's all still there, Echo and the Bunnymen. I used to listen to Echo and the Bunnymen in the summers when I'd come home from Sloane. I was a landscaper all summer, and I had those ear protectors.
Yep.
And I took an old Walkman and I pulled the earpieces off the Walkman and put them into the ear protectors and had my Walkman down on my hip so I could cut lawns and listening to decent music. And then obviously I'll never get enough of the Replacements. Let's just give a shout out to Paul Westerberger.
Yeah.
A hero. And then you got to, if you're talking art school, you got to have Susie, you got to have Joy Division.
Yeah.
Bowie, David Byrne, Pet Shop Boys, New Order.
Yeah.
And then some days I just want to listen to the Doors. I don't know. I'm all over the place.
I like that though. You're not just in one genre, and I feel like I'm the same. In your then versus now notes to me before we did this podcast, we already talked a little bit about streaming and your impressions of streaming versus the boombox generation. What's lost? This thing you wrote really stuck with me, and then I ended up going off on a tangent that I think is not really a tangent. Thought that I wrote down. I wanted to get your sense, like what's lost, what still lives on. And my fill-in note to that, Kev, is sometimes I think like, how do we articulate all this while avoiding the accusations of sounding like old men? Your response is probably, I don't care. But my meaning is I'm definitely a fan of the future bringing us better things, better world leadership, better food, better tolerance for diversity, and better tolerance for people's cultural differences. But what I hate is when people, and everyone says this to me, when people say, hey, adapt or die, man. Look at the Industrial Revolution. Many people didn't want that, huh? But they did when it happened. I hate that analogy. And we're talking about how a groundbreaking musical culture, you're talking about it in your book, has almost been, to some people, wiped off the planet. What's going to happen to that music when you and I are gone? Do we really think social media has helped us? Come on, people. This is common sense stuff. So sorry, Kev, I digress. But for a final reflection, because we're getting close to the end here, the Sloane soundtrack isn't just a playlist, it's a portrait. I think you wrote that. Mm-hmm. What songs are on your Sloane soundtrack?
Let's call it a keep it simple because we're short on time. We'll call it a top 5.
Sure.
Talking bands or songs?
Whatever you want. This is your interview.
Songs. A friend of mine made a Sloane Spotify playlist. You can find it. And I think I'll start with number 5. And number 5 would be a U2 song like Sunday Bloody Sunday. Because you got to think this was the 80s. These guys were kings in the 80s.
Kings.
We're not going to talk about the now U2.
Joshua Tree.
Yeah, Joshua Tree. Coming in at number 5. At number 4, I would put down the Hoodoo Gurus. I Want You Back, Out That Door. Mars, the title of that album was Mars Needs Guitars, out of Australia. You just heard it a lot in the hallways. And that was a band that guys and girls were really into. And when they played downtown somewhere, might have been the Felt Forum at Madison Square Garden.
Oh, yeah.
Echo and the Bunnymen coming in at number 3. Any of their stuff, but probably Songs to Learn and Sing album. But Rescue, stuff like that. Coming in at number 2, I would say would be New Order. So much New Order and people were playing it on vinyl through good speakers. You heard that a lot in the hallways. And
love them.
It was really good on Sundays where people were just chilling out, hungover, or painting in the hallways. People walking around barefoot. guys, girls, just comment on each other's artwork, and really good vibe. And it didn't have to be loud, it just had to be continuous. And coming in at number one, which is a tough one, but no surprise, Killing Jokes, Love Like Blood,
Oh,
which was a song I heard my first weekend there that really set the tone for the next 4 years, because it speaks to a deeper relationship amongst comrades and friends in a living situation or in a survival situation, which I think in Midtown New York in the 80s, people did get mugged, they got stabbed. So we had to take care of each other. And Love Like Blood I'm still in touch with a lot of these dudes, and I see them probably once a year, and we watch each other's kids grow up and stuff like that. So it was a lot
that's
of fun.
amazing. I don't think a lot of people have that. I see mine at some reunions, but I'm lucky if I bump into one or two. A lot of these people have become ghosts, and sadly,
It happens as
a
you
lot
get
of
older.
them, a lot of them have passed away too.
We lost a couple.
I'm not just 50 yet, and I already have a good deal of friends that have passed away.
I give a shout out to the two guys and the lady that we lost at Sloane in the front of the book. But before we go, I thought I'd throw out a little special nugget to your listeners, in that in the book, there are 12 references to Apocalypse Now, and see if you can find them all.
Okay, that's the homework assignment for people.
Homework
Grab your
assignment.
pen just like I did. Well, for the listeners, you can get Kevin's book, Sloane, The Art School Underworld of 80s NYC. You can get it on Amazon and on Kevin's website, claymoregoboom.com. That's ClayMoreGoboom.com, all one word.
Correct.
And you can also hear Kevin on another episode of the albumreview.net podcast. He was on episode number 44, which was titled Rapid Fire Roundtable. Kevin was a part of a 3-person roundtable where we answer rapid fire questions about music. I believe the episode was titled, Does Music Today Suck? A great kind of segue into this episode you and I right now are talking about, which, by the way, we're inching closer to 100. Kevin, thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm just putting my friendship with you aside and looking at you in a completely different light now. And I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to read your book. I wish you all the success and luck moving forward with your book and with everything. So thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you, Greg. It's been an honor to be on, not once, but twice. And I appreciate you taking the time, and your listeners that have made it all the way to the end of our conversation, which I think there's a lot more of this inside the book. And if somebody wants to talk about how can I become a better artist or a designer or a musician, then maybe we can talk about leaving alcohol in your past and then moving on with the rest of your life in a productive manner, which that's just how it worked out for me. I don't think your results may vary, but if anybody is having a tough time and they want to say hello, hit me up and get my email address through that website. And let's just take care of each other.
Props to you, man.
So cut the rose in the blue. Till the fear is gone and the act is done. Enough like blood, enough like blood. Till the fear is gone and the act is done. Enough like blood, enough like blood.
Thank you again for listening to episode number 95 and my conversation with author Kevin Banks. Takeaways from this episode: 1, Kevin is an excellent writer, in my opinion, and his book about living in New York City for college made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And number 2, I think it's clear that Kevin kind of realizes during this conversation that he was partly running from something at home, although he might deny it. Like many people in music and the arts, they have a dream, they have a passion, and I commend Kevin's father for feeding that passion and dropping him off at art school. This began his successful career. So you can pick up Kevin Banks's book, Sloane, The Art School Underworld of 80s NYC on Amazon and on his website, claymoregoboom.com. That's ClaymoreGoboom.com. And you can also hear Kevin on another episode of the albumreview.net podcast, episode number 44, which was titled Rapid Fire Roundtable. You should check that out. I'd like to take a second to talk about this podcast. Believe it or not, over 50% of the people that listen are not subscribed to this podcast on their preferred platform. So I encourage you to hit the subscribe button now. This will help me get more of my dream guests to continue entertaining you. And remember, if you're interested in any of the albums or books that I've discussed in this episode or previous episodes, go to albumreview.net and pick up a copy of your own. Listen to all my podcast album reviews at albumreview.net by clicking on the podcast tab. They can also be heard wherever podcasts are available. Please follow the show on your preferred platform so you can get regular updates on new episodes. And also, if you guys would be so kind as to pop a quick review or rate the podcast, that helps move the needle and get the word out there. I do want to hear from you. Please email me your feedback, album review requests, and any questions that you might have to gpotters@albumreview.net. That's GPOTTERS @albumreview.net. If you'd like to get regular updates on reviews, interviews, product and music news, go to the homepage and join the mailing list. Visit our LinkedIn page and YouTube page, and stay tuned for updates on Instagram, Facebook, and that thing they call TikTok. You can find me at albumreview.net. All right, closing in on 100 episodes. 42% of podcasts don't last past 3 episodes. 53% do not last past 10. So with that said, see you at the next episode. Drop the needle and keep listening.
Take a trip down by the highway. 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 Take a trip down by my highway.